These days, every job is a technology job. Whether you're a programmer, a marketer, or even just someone who sits down in front of a computer every day, you have a stake in the tapestry of the technology industry. Welcome to Wits and Wisdom, a podcast sharing insights, innovations, and inspiration from the award-winning Women in Tech Summit. Join host Gloria Bell, founder of the Women in Tech Summit, multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, and advocate for equity and equality in tech as she sits down with extraordinary guests from the WITS community. Listen in as they discuss wisdom from their career journeys, pro tips from their areas of expertise, and sneak previews of the biggest upcoming tech trends. This is Wits and Wisdom, a podcast from the Women in Tech Summit and Inspiring Tech Foundation.
Hello, and welcome to Wits and Wisdom, a podcast sharing insights, innovation, and inspiration from the award-winning Women in Tech Summit. I'm your host, Gloria Bell, founder of WITS and the Inspiring Tech Foundation. We have conferences coming up, plus our virtual conference in July. If you have been affected by the layoffs in the tech industry, remember to check out information about our ticket assistance program at womenintechsummit.com. Today, I'm live at WITS Northeast in Philadelphia with Leslie Chapman. Leslie is an engineering fellow at Comcast, was one of the technical leads on developing X1, the platform that 35 million customers interact with when they use Comcast services. And she was even honored with 2 Emmys. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're speaking at WITS Northeast about how individual contributors can become influencers without necessarily needing to be official leaders in the workplace in particular. But I have a feeling probably most of the lessons you're going to have are going to be applicable to anything in life. I don't want to spoil your talk, but I know you have a few guidelines you lay out. Would you be willing to share a few of them with our audience?
Absolutely.
Especially since this won't air until after your talk.
Yeah, so in the talk, I try to draw a little bit of a corollary between actually a play on the words influencer by talking about social media influencers and how we might not think that there's a lot that we could learn from somebody like Khloe Kardashian in the tech space, but there really is. And some of those keys that you can learn are about having a personal brand. It goes back to letting people know who you are when you walk in a room. And I talk about what should that brand be. A lot of times when people talk about personal brand, they'll talk about, I like to wear cat socks. And while I do like to wear cat socks, my personal brand is one of completing the tasks that I've been assigned, of being trustworthy, of listening to others, really of being the kind of teammate that I would want to work with. And I think when you have a brand like that, when people want to work with you, that precedes everything else.
I like it. I can't wait for your talk. So one thing I did notice, you did mention a little bit more about some of the things that fall in the soft skill category, a little bit more than, say, the technical skill category. Why do you think it's really important that technologists make sure that they're learning some of those soft skill, durable skill things that fall in those categories as much as they are learning the technical skills?
For me, at least, that's been where I try to help to educate others, or at least explain what I've gone through and what I've learned. I don't think that there's anything that I could teach anybody about Java or TypeScript that they couldn't learn by Googling it or going on to Stack Overflow. Am I incredibly intelligent and adept at those things? Absolutely. But if you want to go learn more, I'm probably not as up to date as the latest article you could go read on Oracle. I don't find that there is as much information out there to help technologists learn some of the softer skills. And I found during my career that when I was being held back, it was the soft skills that were holding me back. I had the technical chops, but I didn't listen. I wasn't the teammate that other people wanted to work with because I always had to raise my hand first in every meeting. And it sucked the air out of the room for others. And it didn't really make me look any smarter. It just made me look like a know-it-all. And it really wasn't conducive to a team atmosphere because when one person is doing all the speaking, even if they're the most senior person in the room, it defeats the purpose of working on a team. Working on a team is because when you have lots of ideas at the table, it makes for a better product. So one of the lessons that I learned was that I was much more effective when I would shut up and listen to every single person in the room. And one of the things that I found was that thing that I was chomping at the bit to say, somebody else in the room had that idea. But when I sat at the table and listened to everybody's idea, I could be the person at the end of the meeting that could pick a little bit out of each idea and aggregate them all into something bigger than any one individual. And people started to really want to work with me because I would listen to them. And I want to teach other people how to do that.
Very difficult skill that I think everyone needs to work on much more than any of us realize. So what would you consider another really important skill that technologists aren't taught and probably don't think about?
Being able to explain your technical ideas to non-technical audiences. As technologists, a lot of the teams that we work with are product owners, project managers, our people leaders, who might not always be as technical. And once you've come up with this really great idea that you want funding for, whether it's funding in terms of dollars, funding in terms of time, funding in terms of more people to work on it with, you need to be able to communicate why your idea is the best idea. Like, we get so excited about going into the weeds and showing off the littlest, but the coolest thing that I did right, it was all the way down, all the way in this code where I used this semaphore and recursion. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's so cool that you did that, but don't mention recursion to a product owner. They don't want you to open up your code and point to lines of code. They want you to be able to succinctly explain why your idea is the best. And that is a skill that I think a lot of technologists need to learn. And it takes a lot of practice to get there. And then building on being able to translate those ideas to non-technical audiences, being able to understand the motivations of those technical audiences. So learning as a technologist that even though I don't control the budget, I need to have some financial acumen. I need to be prepared when I'm saying my idea is the best idea. How much is it going to cost? Only $1 million a month. It's probably not the best idea. It depends on what company you're working for. You layer upon that then understanding how the business works, what's important not only to you as a technologist, but what's important to the business, what's important to the customers, and having that holistic view of why we're building things. Because we're not just building things to make the coolest thing, unfortunately.
Wouldn't it be nice if that's what we were doing, though? So in talking about these additional skills beyond the technical, you mentioned listening was one of the ones that, you really were working on learning. Did you find any one particular of these skills that was especially challenging for you?
Each one was challenging at its own time. But if I had to point to the most challenging lesson that I had to learn, it was about letting go and letting other people do the fun stuff. There was a point in my career where I was one of the lead developers when we wanted new features built for X1 or Flex. I was the engineer that the product managers would come to. I could do it really quickly with super high quality. I knew the code backwards and forwards. I understood our customer base. It took so few words to even communicate what was wanted and why, and I could just get it done so quickly. And it was so exciting. because I'd build a whole new screen and knew that it would be in front of 35 million customers. And that's what got me out of bed in the morning. But I had a whole team at this point of more junior engineers that were surrounding me. And part of my job at this point was to be teaching them. And it did take somebody coming to me and saying, Leslie, you can't keep taking all the fun work. And it definitely felt like a blow to the gut, but I also understood. I had to do some reflection on the engineers, the senior engineers throughout my career that gave me the opportunity to do the shiny fun work that got out of my way. And so I understood why it was important. It was still hard, but to let go, have somebody run to my office and go, let's build this. And I'd go, great, let's get Dan and Joan in here. And we're going to explain to them how they're going to build it. It was a difficult transition for a lot of reasons. It was difficult to let go of that dopamine rush of getting to build that new thing. It was hard for me to also communicate to other team members why some features would take longer. So that fell on my shoulders as well, to have to be going through this, but also say, like, no, it's going to take a little longer, but it's only going to take a little longer for a little while as I bring this team up to speed. And we're going to have not one Leslie, but a whole troop of Leslies. And then we're going to move really fast. So just bear with me while we get there. So that was one of the hardest things. And I will say, I don't code anymore. I never thought that there would be a day where I would step away from the keyboard and not be coding. And when people would ask me years and years ago, why do I want to remain an individual contributor instead of being a people leader? My answer was because I want to write code all day. And I don't write code all day, but I'm still really happy. And I find immense joy in looking at other people's faces when they build that shiny new feature and when they write that last bit of code and click compile and it goes on the television screen and it works, and the spark in their eye brings me that same joy as when that spark was in my eye.
So, really excited about you speaking at WITS. How do you feel that speaking at WITS plays into your role as an influencer? Both your job at Comcast and just in the tech community, the women in tech community at large.
For so many reasons. First and foremost, very excited that we're in Philadelphia today. I am a longtime resident of Philadelphia. I've been a homeowner in the city for over 20 years, and a lot of folks don't think of Philadelphia as a tech hub. So have to get out and show love for Philadelphia as a techie city. But beyond my love of Philadelphia, I feel like it's so important to get out there as a woman and get out there as a Black woman and show every other woman, every other person of color, you can get here too. Look at me, someone, if you see anything of yourself in me, then know that there's opportunity for you. And I've been with Comcast for 17 years. So another important thing to me is to get out there and say, we're not the big bad cable company. We have a lot of fun and we make some fun stuff and we work with a lot of fun people. So it's all of that piled on top of each other, as well as getting to meet everybody else that's here. Events like this are force multipliers. I don't know who I'm going to meet this afternoon, but I'm sure I'm going to make some connections that are going to last, and we're going to end up collaborating on something that's going to touch somebody's life.
That is exactly why we're here. That is what we are trying to do, is to be the place where those wonderful synergistic occurrences can happen. So I am sure you will as well. Before we start wrapping things up, do you have any words of advice for women in the tech industry who want to pursue leadership, but maybe they don't want to climb the organizational ladder? Kind of want to find that role that you have. What words of advice would you give them?
So first of all, if you don't already have a mentor, please find one. And find one that is at a place in their career that you aspire to get to, so that you can learn from them how they got there. and learn a little bit more about, do I really want to go there? I know that sounds like, oh, sure, that's easy. Just go find a mentor. You would be surprised. Just cold call people. The worst they can say is no. You'll find more often than not, they'll say yes, or they'll say, I'm sorry, I don't have time right now, but here's a list of 10 other people that I think you would have a wonderful conversation with. So find out more from people that are doing it right now, what that really looks like and what they did to get there.
All great pieces of advice. Is there anything you have coming up that you want to give a shout out about?
Sure. Coming up in July 13th in New York City, I'm actually hosting a track at QCon. And that track is dedicated to the idea of being a Staff Plus engineer. So it's all about being individual contributors. And I have a fantastic lineup of speakers. If you go online, you can check it out at QCon. And a couple of my mentors will be there. So I'm humbled at this lineup that I've set up.
That sounds like a great event. I would encourage everybody to take a look. And if you're in the Philly area, quick train ride. Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you so much for joining us on Wits and Wisdom. Our audience is going to take away so many great insights from the discussions that we've had. And I want to encourage everyone to be sure and go back and listen to some of the prior episodes of the podcast and go to womenintechsummit.com and look at the upcoming summits in Raleigh and our virtual summit coming up in July. We have the lineups and the speakers are starting to populate on the website. And so be sure and view those and get your tickets to join us. Thank you all for joining us on Wits and Wisdom, and we'll see you next time.
Ready to learn more about the Women in Tech Summit? Visit our website at womenintechsummit.net. That's womenintechsummit.net to view our most up-to-date event schedules, calls for speakers, and sponsorship opportunities. If you enjoyed this episode, bookmark the show, give us a follow, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us educate, inspire, and connect with even more movers and shakers within and beyond the technology industry. Thanks for listening, and see you here again soon on Wits and Wisdom, a podcast from the Women in Tech Summit and the Inspiring Tech Foundation.